Good evening. The meeting will please come to order. This is a regular meeting of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Wilmette. Will everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you again for joining us tonight. We will call the matters in the order in which they appear on the printed agenda. There are copies of the agenda on the table by the door. You may want to have one so you can follow along to see when your matter will be called. If you plan to address us tonight, we ask that you please come up to the podium. Please speak into the microphone and tell us who you are and where you live, as that may be relevant to the matter at hand. Everything you say and everything we say is recorded, and from those recordings, minutes of the meeting are prepared. These minutes are available at Village Hall and on our website at wilmette.gov. Also, our Village Board meetings are televised on Local Access Channel 6 and on the Internet. By televising our meetings, we make it easy for our neighbors in the community to follow the proceedings of the Village Board, see the types of matters that come before us, the questions we ask, and the policies we create. You can find archived videos of Village Board and other local government meetings on our website. Before each meeting, the board receives a packet of agenda materials, and these materials are also posted on our website on the Friday before our meeting, so residents and other interested parties can review the same materials that the board members receive. Finally, we're a community of neighbors, and as such, we want our meetings to be as civil and courteous as possible. I know that we, the board, as well as our residents and those speaking today, will promote civility by listening, being respectful of others, acknowledging that we are all striving to support and improve our community, and understanding that we may each have different ideas for achieving that objective. As one courtesy to those around you, please take this time to turn off your cell phones and other devices. And while we're doing that, Mr. Hallgren, would you please call the roll?
Trustee Leonard.
Here.
Trustee Shepard.
Here.
Trustee Steen.
Here.
Trustee Lieber.
Here.
Trustee Smith is absent. Trustee Kennedy.
Here.
And President Plunkett.
Here, we have a quorum. The next item on the agenda is item 2, public comment. During public comment, individuals are allotted up to 3 minutes to address the board on an item which is not already on the agenda. Members of the audience may address the board on matters which are on tonight's agenda when that particular matter is called. Is there any member of the audience who would like to address the board on a matter which is not on tonight's agenda? Okay, I don't see any hands. So we will then move on to item 3, which is the consent agenda. As described on the printed agenda, items which are either routine business or normally not debated by the village board are placed on the consent agenda. All items beginning with the 3 are on the consent agenda. And tonight the consent agenda consists of the items on page 1, beginning with item 3.1, through page 3 and ending with item 3.16. Items on the consent agenda are up for approval tonight. If an item is not removed by a member of the audience and is not removed by one of the trustees, the item will be approved and it will not be discussed. Are there any items that the trustees would like to remove from the consent agenda? All shaking their heads no. Is there any member of the audience who would like to remove an item from the consent agenda? Okay, seeing no hands, may I have a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
So moved.
Trustee Lieber, is there a second?
Second.
Trustee Kennedy, it's been moved and seconded. Mr. Hallgren, would you please call the roll on the motion to adopt the consent agenda?
Trustee Leonard.
Aye.
Trustee Shepard.
Aye.
Trustee Steen.
Aye.
Trustee Lieber.
Aye.
Trustee Kennedy.
Aye.
And President Plunkett.
Aye. Motion carries. The consent agenda has been adopted. So if you are here for an item on the consent agenda, it has been approved. And to clarify for people who are here tonight, all of the items beginning with a 3 have been approved. There will be no further discussion of any of the items on the consent agenda, so you are free to leave, but of course you're more than welcome to stay for part or all of our meeting. Moving on to report of officers, I am introducing Chris Hasbrook, who I recommended, and we voted on him tonight in the consent agenda, to be appointed to the Board of Fire and Police Commissioners. Mr. Hasbrook has an impressive resume in connection with the fire service. And when I met him, I knew he would be a great addition. He's been very patient because I think he's been applying to be on this board for many, many years now. So welcome, and if you could please introduce yourself.
Sure, thank you. President Chris Hasbrook. I've been living in Wilmette since 2012. My wife Carrie and I live on 6 in Gregory, that neighborhood, and we have 3 kids, 2 in college and 1 is a junior at New Trier. President's point, I've had a lot of experience both in general management and in volunteerism with law enforcement and with fire, and so just I'm honored to be a part of the group and look forward to serving out the terms and helping with finding the right people here to fill the roles here and grow the professionalism. Thank you.
Thank you. As I mentioned to you, it's a very important role that we have in this village, where we have residents that help interview potential firefighters, police officers, as well as promotions. And so I thank you for your willingness to take this on. Thank you. Next, I am honored to have a proclamation designating September 15th, 2025 to October 15th, 2025 as National Hispanic Heritage Month in the village of Wilmette. And I just wanted to talk about what's going on in the village in recognition of Hispanic Heritage Month. I'd like to share that the Wilmette Public Library is hosting a complimentary screening of the film El Norte on October 6th. And I invite residents to check out the library's webpage. They're listed of curated readings by age group, including memoirs and personal stories of Hispanic American authors. And I was also asked to let everybody know, did you know you can use your library card to request an Explore More Illinois pass? And this pass offers benefits like free admission or special discounts to various cultural attractions, including special for this month, the National Puerto Rican Museum in Chicago. So I think that's a very cool service that our library has. So now I am honored to read this very important proclamation. Whereas the Village of Wilmette supports the rights of every individual to experience equality of treatment and values our diverse population of residents, businesses, and visitors, recognizing that this diversity is one of this community's greatest strengths. And whereas September 15th to October 15th is annually celebrated as National Hispanic Heritage Month to commemorate various Latin American Independence Days and honor the Hispanic community's long-term presence and effort for equality across our nation. Whereas the 2025 theme of Hispanic Heritage Month is Collective Heritage, honoring the past, inspiring the future, which emphasizes the importance of recognizing the history, journeys, and achievements of the Hispanic and Latin American communities, as well as highlighting the unique voices of those who continue to shape the future. And whereas individuals are encouraged to learn about the Hispanic community and to celebrate this month to recognize the contributions that Hispanic individuals have made to our society, resources can be found on the village's website. Now, therefore, I, Senta Plunkett, Village President of Wilmette, proclaim September 15th to October 15th, 2025 as National Hispanic Heritage Month and call upon all people of Wilmette, Illinois to learn more about various Hispanic communities and to celebrate this month. Thank you. Mr. Raymond, do you have any report?
No report this evening.
Okay, so we will move on to our standing committee reports. The first up is the Land Use Standing Committee report. Trustee Leonard.
Thank you. Tonight we have an exciting presentation by the Affordable Housing Land Trust Program by community partners of affordable housing.
Welcome.
Good
Mr.
evening.
Rob
Thank
Anthony.
you. There we go. Well, thank you for having me back tonight. This is really a pretty quick update on the progress with the Community Land Trust Program that we started a few years ago, and really a final report as we're really wrapping up the project. So to refresh your memory, this started with a donation from Optima for their first phase of that development, rather than providing any affordable units on site, they made a donation. That donation was used to create a community land trust here in Wilmette. And we were able to leverage that $1.6 million with approximately a little over $1.3 million in additional funds, which came from the Illinois Housing Development Authority. It came from state donation tax credits. The Morganti Wilson Foundation is here. They made very generous contributions each year and have been fundraising for the CLT work in Wilmette. The EA Foundation, also another Wilmette family, Lori and Lou Leibowitz, contributed to the program. And you can see in the original design, we had hoped to complete 14 units. And the split out is there on the screen. We had 3 single-family homes for households at 80% of median income, 3 for people at 120% of median income, 1 townhome for each of those income brackets, 1 condo for each of those income brackets, and then 4 rental units. We were able to complete 15 units rather than 14, so we were able to squeeze out 1 extra unit and raise a little bit more funds to do that. And we also sort of upgraded one of those condos to a townhome. So it was actually 3 townhomes and 1 condo. The schedule for the project really went from about mid-year, July through June. And we had proposed completing these units by July or June of 2026. We just finished rehab of the last townhome unit, and it's available for sale now to a household earning less than 80% of median income for $199,000. It is on Ridge Road. We do have a couple applicants who have applied for the unit, and we're working with them to try to get them qualified. But as of right now, that's available, and that's the last unit, so we would expect that to be sold very soon. So we're really completing the project about 9 months ahead of schedule and getting 1 extra unit out of it. The next several slides are just some photos. Some of these you've seen during prior updates, but there's some photos of the homes that we added to the Community Land Trust program. And in cases where the homeowners were willing to share their photos, there are some homeowner photos with it too. So this is one of the single-family homes on Laverne. This is the very first one we acquired on Thayling Court. This is one on LeClaire. This family, the mother actually came in when we did a previous update. She came in and spoke about her experience. If you remember, she and her husband have 5 kids. They lived here in Wilmette but couldn't afford to buy, and they were able to buy through the program. These are a couple rental units on Prairie Avenue. The other 3 rental units on Green Bay Road. A home on Laramie and one of the happy homeowners. Home on Central Avenue and more happy homeowners. Home on Hibbard. And on Ridge, we have 2 townhome units within the same development. So one is complete and the other one is the one that's available now. So one of these is available on Ridge Road. This was the other townhome we acquired on Skokie Boulevard. This was most of the homes that we acquire need quite a bit of rehab. This townhome was in incredible shape. We had to do very little to this townhome, and very, very spacious. It's a really great unit. This was the condo unit on Greenleaf. It's sort of behind Panera, right in downtown Wilmette, and it's in the Landmark building. And this needed quite a bit of work, a whole new kitchen. It had been empty for quite a long time. One of the goals of the board in creating this program was to make sure that houses were distributed throughout the village. And so you can see there's sort of a cluster, as you would imagine. Most of the single-family homes are in the western part of Wilmette. So there are 2 on the other side of the expressway, and then a number of single-family homes and a townhome sort of along Skokie Boulevard. And then there are 2 townhomes in what I would call central Wilmette. And then there were 3, 4, 5, 6 units in what I would call eastern Wilmette. So 3 units, 3 rental units here, 2 rental units here, and the 1 condo. And so they really were dispersed throughout the village as we had hoped. And we also wanted to just give you a bit of color around who bought these homes and who are renting these homes without invading people's privacy. So these are just some sort of general home buyer and tenant profiles in no particular order. In fact, they're purposely not in the order of the photos that we previously showed. But one of the home buyers is a mom with 2 kids. She lived in Rogers Park before she bought here, and she works as a machine operator. Another 2 parents with 5 kids. They were raised in Wilmette. That's the family that came in and spoke to you in our previous update that we provided. There's a mom with 2 kids who works in a local hospital. Another mom with 2 kids who was recently divorced. She had lived here in Wilmette but couldn't afford to stay after the divorce, so she was able to buy through the program. A single woman who's a local school teacher. There's a senior who is taking care of her adult niece who has special needs, and she was formerly homeless. She works in a local grocery store. She's in one of our rental units. Another family that has 2 parents with 1 kid. They lived in Chicago. Another family, 2 parents with 2 kids. One of them has special needs. They lived in Wilmette. They really wanted to stay in Wilmette. They couldn't buy in Wilmette, but they wanted to stay here because of their child with special needs. They wanted to stay connected to the services that they had. Another mom with 2 kids who works as a recruiter and a rideshare driver. There were 3 units that had seniors that were able to stay in the community. Another mom with 2 kids, again, one with special needs, recently divorced, lived in Chicago. And then finally, a single woman who works for an insurance company, and she lived in Highwood. Also part of the design when we were talking about this program, the village board expressed that you really wanted to serve existing Wilmette residents, but you also wanted to bring in new people who didn't have the opportunity to live in Wilmette previously. So as you can see through these profiles, it really was a good combination of that. We also collect race and ethnicity data, so you can see that 29% of the home buyers and tenants were Black or African American, 14% Hispanic, 7% Asian, and 50% white non-Hispanic. So really between sort of the people that we want to serve, the number of units, the location of the units, the breakouts of homes versus townhomes and condos, it really, I would say, was a remarkable success, and we would love to do some more units at some point in the future. And I'm happy to answer any questions that, as I'm sure the Briganti Wilson Foundation is as well.
Rob, for those who may be just learning about this program for the
Yeah.
first time, can you give some background on how the Land Trust program works, CEQA's role, how homeowners build wealth through the opportunities?
Yeah, absolutely. So the way that the community land trust model works is that sometimes we build new housing, but other times we acquire homes and then rehab those homes. And then we sell the homes only to a low to moderate income household. The nonprofit entity retains ownership of the underlying lands. And so essentially what's happening is you're taking that land value out of the equation so that instead of a $400,000 house or a $500,000 house, it can be sold at, say, $200,000. That's affordable to someone making about 80% of the median income. And then when that home buyer decides to sell their home, they're again only selling the home, not the land. And there are resale restrictions which require them to sell to another low to moderate income household at a resale restricted price. They still build equity and they can get some appreciation if the home appreciates, but that appreciation is capped so that it always stays affordable to the next buyer. And so you're not just helping that first family. The way the CLT program works is that you're creating this infrastructure of housing that will stay affordable in perpetuity. And people who otherwise were priced out of buying a home are able to buy a home, build that equity, just like anyone else is. So as they're paying down their loan, they're building equity, but they're just doing it on a $200,000 house rather than a $400,000 or a $500,000 house.
And on the rentals, are you own the rentals, so you're
Right. So we own the rentals, and we have about 163 units that we manage now. So we manage those. And then the other piece of the CLT model that I didn't really talk about is what is called stewardship. And so our goal is not just to get people into housing, but it's to make sure that they're successful and sustainable in that housing. So the stewardship piece has a lot of ongoing help and services. We're a HUD certified housing counseling agency, so we do a lot of education and counseling, financial and budget counseling. We have a match savings program for home buyers. We have a revolving loan fund if they need help making home repairs. We have classes on home maintenance, on landscaping, and all types of things to make sure people are really prepared and successful in their homes.
Yes.
First, I just want to say congratulations. I mean, I think it's amazing the progress you've made in a relatively short period of time.
Yeah.
And to have exceeded the expectations, with one additional unit, and to do so on budget, and is just, really impressive. So congratulations, and thank you for doing that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for your partnership in this. We couldn't do it without you.
I would like to ask about demand. Tell me about how quickly you've been able to find candidates, and tell me about the ongoing demand and what we can expect in the future.
So I would say most of the homes were sold within 3 or 4 weeks of rehab being completed. So there's lots of demand. On the rental side, we probably have about 700 or 800 people on our rental waiting list. So there's huge demand on the rental side as well.
So pretty much if you received another big check, you'd be off to the
Yeah, I
races.
mean, the bigger challenge would be finding the homes and that piece. It's not going to be a challenge finding home buyers and tenants. That there's no shortage there. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I want to.
Say anything, or you're no? Okay.
I want to thank the Morganti Wilson Foundation, Wilmette residents who have really stepped up and been stewards of this program for a long time, and advocates, and it's a wonderful program in our community, and you've got to feel so proud right now to see this. And I can tell you that, when you brought a family, came in, the family of 5, and they came to this board meeting, and, most of us, didn't have a dry eye here. It was just such a heartwarming story. So, thank you, and we're just really happy with this program, and we, hope to welcome you back in the near future with more. So,
Sounds great.
thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. Okay.
Trustee Leonard, anything else for land use?
That's it.
Okay, then we will go to Trustee Shepherd, the Finance Committee.
I'm sorry, I've developed a little cough here or so, but so I think I got it. Adoption of ordinance 2025-081, implementing a municipal grocery retailer's occupation tax and municipal grocery service occupation tax. Finance Chapter 6, Article 19.
We're gonna
So
go to,
moved.
yes, is there a motion?
Yes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second, okay, it's been moved and seconded, and I think we're gonna start with a short presentation from Mr. Holgren.
Correct. All right, so I'm going to provide just a brief overview just to kind of set the discussion on the stage like we did last time, just on the grocery tax here. So historically, the state has traditionally imposed a 1% sales tax on food, drug, and medical appliances. This was originally set in 1990 as part of the state sales tax reform. Most recently, the state budget for 2025, which will be effective on January 1st, 2026, included the elimination of the state grocery tax. Ultimately, this did not have a financial impact to the state budget, but it does have an impact to local governments because that 1% state or grocery tax flows through to local governments. And it had a projected impact of around $325 million to local governments. And more locally, we estimate that impact to be around $600,000 to Wilmette. But also as part of that state legislation, local municipalities were allowed to implement a local municipal tax, which is what we're here discussing. Over the last several meetings, we've discussed this topic. It was originally introduced as part of the mid-year financial discussion in July 22nd. There were a variety of follow-up questions, data requests, and analysis from the trustees. We continued the discussion at August 26th. At that point in time, the majority of the board provided direction to adopt, to draft the ordinance for adoption, and then we introduced the ordinance at the last meeting and have had continued discussion about the grocery tax. At the last meeting, a discussion was brought up about creating a local assistance program, and we'll discuss that a little bit the next steps section when we get here to the end. As I mentioned on the previous slide, local municipalities have been allowed to implement this grocery tax. As a point of reference, 36 out of the 43 communities in the Northwest Municipal Conference have enacted a replacement grocery tax. Regionally, you can see where we are at. We are having the final discussion today. Evanston is having a vote next week regarding implementation of a grocery tax as well. As I previously mentioned, we have, through our analysis, we estimate the overall impact of a grocery tax to be around $600,000. This was going through our historical analysis of home rule versus our municipal sales tax collection. And then as an alternative, we looked at what the impact of this $600,000 revenue loss would be if we were to put this onto the property taxes, and what that cost would be on an average property tax bill or on the median property tax bill. And that's what this slide lays out here. So ultimately, our next steps here, the deadline for filing of the ordinance is October 1st. We plan to have a discussion with the Finance Committee in mid-October timeframe about a local assistance program. I know that one of the discussion points was about a vehicle sticker rebate program, but we were also open to other suggestions or ideas. That initial discussion in mid-October was really a brainstorming session for ideas. So if other trustees have ideas about other local assistance programs, we are glad to do research on those topics. But really the intent here was to kind of set the stage for the discussion for the trustees.
Well, this is the fourth time that this is in front of us, so obviously it's something that we've been discussing for a long time now. At the last meeting, we kind of had a discussion first and then opened it up for public comment. Tonight's meeting, we'll open it up for public comment, and then the trustees will discuss. So at this point, I'd like to invite anybody that wishes to make a public comment to come up to the podium and speak. And just as I introduced at the beginning of the meeting, please state your name and where you live. And we do limit our public comment to 3 minutes. So with that, please come on up if you would wish to speak.
Hi, good evening. I'm Renee Cox. I've been a resident of Wilmette for over 20 years. I'm going to read a statement from Bonnie Kim, who is another Wilmette resident, who wanted to be here tonight, but then had a conflict arise, so I offered to present her statement on her behalf. So her statement reads as following. I attended the board meeting 2 weeks ago, and I heard the trustees, who are in favor of the grocery tax, recognize that this is a regressive tax in that it disproportionately affects lower income people, and regressive taxes eventually widen the gap of income inequality. Imposing such a tax is contrary to the guiding principles of equity and inclusivity in Wilmette's comprehensive plan. To quote the plan, equity is both the process and outcome of ensuring the consistent and systemic fair, just, and impartial treatment to all individuals, especially those who belong to historically underserved and marginalized groups. One of the plan's objectives is to establish inclusion as a core principle in the planning, decision-making, and policy development and implementation processes. The trustees in favor of the grocery tax regretted that it was regressive in nature, but based their pro-tax stance on the need for financial responsibility and the concern of economic uncertainty. But Wilmette is thriving right now with the revitalization of our shopping districts and a generous reserve fund. It feels like this is the ideal time to make a decision to not hurt our most vulnerable people, to follow the lead of our governor and General Assembly, who believe that taxing essentials like food at a time when food costs are rising is wrong, and to commit to finding alternatives to this unfair tax. Thank you for your service to our community and for taking our concerns to heart.
Would anyone else wish to make a public comment? Okay, seeing none, I will close public comment. Thank you. And, just for the public knows, we had public comment at our last meeting, and we have received many emails on this topic, and we have read them all. So, if you have expressed your opinion to us, we have heard your concerns. So I think at this point, I think the trustees can open it up for discussion before we take a vote. Trustee Shepherd, as chair of the Finance Committee, I don't know if you want to go first or if you've got a cough.
I think I went first last time, but I'm willing to go first again, assuming I don't have another coughing fit. So we'll see what happens here. I appreciate people who've made comments both in the last 3 or 4 meetings as well as the emails. I always enjoy when we have an engaged community. I think the airing of discussions and issues in an open forum is the way to go. So I always applaud that. This will probably, I guess I'm being real transparent in that this will be the third time I think I say basically the same thing, but because there could be different audiences, I think it's worthwhile to go through the exercise unless anyone objects, because my views have been relatively consistent. They were covered in the record, and I think it's important because I know there have been emails that go out that I think somewhat set up the view for the grocery tax in a bit of a straw man fashion, and I don't think hit some of the nuances that I think are important. And I think when we're thinking about the grocery tax, there's $600,000 a year that if we don't take in that method, we'll take in another method, which will probably be the property tax. And we'll speak about all of our expenses, the police station, all of these things, but this would be a foregone revenue source, which is a choice we can make. And when this was first announced by the governor, I did see the grocery tax as a more regressive tax, and I ideally would like to minimize that, and assumed we could move it, all things being equal, to the property tax. But unfortunately, all things are not equal because of the opt-in structure that's under discussion. Given that our grocery stores are on the border of our town, and Evanston did a study and came to the conclusion that 56% of their revenues come from outside of Evanston. A good portion of the revenues coming in through this tax are not paid by Wilmette taxpayers. So if we're consistent with the Evanston number of about 50%, that's $300,000 a year, and over the next 10 years, and we tend to think in long time periods, that's $3 million that will be moved from outside of our community, a tax coming in, to the families and members of our community. So while regressive, I'm not sure that overcomes the absolute doubling of the amount of taxes paid by Wilmette residents. So I think it makes it a much more complicated discussion. So I don't. And when we look at also our West Side residents and residents who are a little further away from our 2 core grocery stores, and then there's the fresh market, they may shop in other communities, and in those other communities, they've already instituted, so Northfield, Northbrook, Glenview, and Skokie, places that are likely that our residents may shop, they have instituted this tax. So I wouldn't say the fact that they've done so is an excuse for us to do so as well, or they've done it so we might as well do it too. I think it's just an economic factor that we have to take into account, because if our residents are paying it on this $600,000 on the property tax and continuing to pay the grocery tax in another community, I think that is not to the benefit of the families of Wilmette. So it's really for those reasons. And another point I want to make, and we've made, is that, and I said 400 families 2 weeks ago, and I was incorrect. There's 639 families in the community that do get SNAP benefits, and those SNAP benefits are not taxed via the grocery tax. So a move from the grocery tax to the property tax could make those families move into a tax structure that they didn't have before. So another reason that it may not be the best decision with all the factors that come into it. As Mr. Hallgren mentioned in his presentation, I am all for thinking about ways to look at our taxing system. We've talked about the vehicle stickers. There may be other ideas out there, and would be more than willing to discuss those and see ways that we can make the system as fair as possible.
Would like to go next? Okay, Trustee Leonard.
As we've discussed in previous sessions, this is picking the best of a bunch of poor choices here. On one hand, we have the opportunity to just drop the $600,000 line item in our revenue review and just do without those revenues. And I think that's choice number one. And I think I've seen a lot of emails and I've heard people talking about that being an attractive option since the community is doing so well and because we have excess reserves. And I just want to make sure that everyone in the community understands that, yes, we are doing very well and our bond rating is the highest possible. Our efficiency is excellent. However, next week, we're going to be spending an entire committee of the whole session talking about a wish list, a binder full of capital improvement projects that number in the hundreds of millions of dollars over the next 10 years. And these are all vital expenses, such as vehicles and roads and water plant expenses and many other very important expenses that this community needs to address. And I can guarantee you that we will not be funding all of them because we just can't afford it. We will be using a portion of our excess reserves towards those capital expenses, but the point being that $600,000 annual expense is vitally important and must be maintained for the betterment of the entire community. So setting that option aside, then the question, as Trustee Shepherd was saying, is do we maintain this existing continuation of this existing tax on our groceries, or do we put it on the real estate taxes? And I'm very anti-real estate tax increases. I think everyone should understand that there really is an indirect relationship between real estate taxes and home valuation. The more we add to the real estate taxes, the lower the value of our the base of our home values throughout the community. And that then has other effects as well. So the concept of keeping our real estate taxes as low as possible is very important to me. It's one of the issues I ran on when I ran for this office, and I feel strongly, about it. So I'm supporting the continuation of this grocery tax, but I'm also very strongly behind setting up, some sort of program to help those in our community that are struggling with their homeowners' expenses, their groceries, and to the extent that we can do some sort of public-private fund that we've already discussed, license fees and other types of expenses within the community. I would strongly recommend that we step into that role and that we find a way of using public and private money to set up a fund to help those in our community who are most in need. So I will be supporting this, but also supporting the new program for additional help for the community.
I'd like to go. Trustee Liebert.
Thank you. I will be voting to keep the 1% grocery tax in place. As I stated at previous meetings, at first blush, this seems like an extremely complicated issue. And the more we look at it, it is a complicated issue. It's a difficult issue. And to echo what Trustee Leonard and what Trustee Shepard have said, one of the good things that has come out of this is I think it has caused us to focus on some things that we haven't focused on in the past. And it will allow us in coming months to focus on things like reducing vehicle sticker prices for lower income folks, which will help make up what this 1% grocery tax has been taking from them, and if it's passed, will continue to take. I do want to say that I appreciate the thoughtfulness of my fellow trustees' discussions, and I greatly appreciate the comments I've received from so many people in the village, not only one-on-one, but also emails and other public comments today and previous meetings. One of the things that I have heard from some people in emails is that we are doing this simply because everybody else has. And I think we as a board and we as a community can take pride in the fact that we've actually had a very thoughtful discussion about some really difficult, thorny issues. But we don't live in a vacuum. If this were simply an issue of Wilmette wanting to put in place a grocery tax as opposed to raising those funds from somewhere else, I'd be voting no. But we don't live in a vacuum. We live in a community where many of our residents, particularly many of our lower income residents and those on fixed incomes, live far away from Wilmette's 2 full-service grocery stores. As a result, they almost certainly do their grocery shopping in neighboring communities closer to their homes, or to discount grocery stores like Aldi or Costco for those who have large families. And all of those neighboring communities have voted to keep this 1% tax. So if we take the step of shifting this revenue source from the grocery tax to a property tax, well, for lower income and fixed income Wilmette residents who shop at grocery stores outside of Wilmette, we'll be hitting them with a double whammy. We'll be hitting them with higher property taxes while they continue to pay that same amount in grocery taxes. We'll be hurting the very people who I think all of us want to help. And I don't want to sign on to that. I'm not voting in favor of maintaining the 1% grocery tax because the surrounding communities have voted to maintain them. I'm voting in favor of maintaining the 1% grocery tax because doing anything else will simply further the growing gulf between rich and poor. So for those reasons, I'll be voting in favor of maintaining the 1% grocery tax.
Sure, I'll go. So I was very pleased to see the sort of public reaction to this. I agree with my fellow trustees. It's always great to get real engagement and feedback from the community. I'll say that in the engagement that I've seen, it's been overwhelmingly against adopting a grocery tax, which has been my position, as you all know, the whole time. I appreciate hearing that from the community. I think it's useful to actually reflect that in our thinking as well. I like the way that Trustee Shepard set it up. I do think at the end of the day, this is sort of a question between the making our taxes less regressive, which I think most or all of us have expressed as something that we want to do, and the amount of money that is coming from outside the community, as Trustee Shepard suggested. We don't know what that amount is, but I'm fine accepting that it's roughly 50%, maybe. We actually don't know. But what it tells us is that we are saying $300,000 from other communities. And These are from people buying groceries that live in other communities. That's a revenue stream that we want to keep. I personally will be very interested to see what we are able to do in terms of things like vehicle stickers and other things. I suspect it won't be nearly $300,000, but it will be a revenue stream that we are giving up. So there's a little bit of a sort of, we're willing to give up vehicle stickers because they're in Wilmette. We're not willing to give up grocery taxes because it's coming out from outside of Wilmette. I have had a couple of discussions where trustees have told me that, well, if we thought it was 10%, and by the way, to be clear, I don't think that it's 10% coming from outside of our community. I do think it's a bigger number than that, but if it was a small number like 10% or smaller, then maybe that would be an acceptable amount. So we're really getting down to, and I truly do appreciate the discussion we've had because it's helped me understand sort of where we are philosophically. But it sounds like there's a number between, call it 60,000, which would be 10%. I'm making these are a bit arbitrary, so I want to be clear about that. But somewhere between 60,000, which might be okay, and somewhere between 300,000, which is beyond what we want to do. So I think that's something good for us to keep in mind in terms of how we're thinking about where we want to get our funds from, how much we're willing to forego or not forego. At the end of the day, as I said last time, and as will surprise no one here, my basic principle is that this is a regressive tax. It's a regressive tax on Wilmette residents. It's a regressive tax on people who aren't within Wilmette as well, though I understand that we're elected by the people of Wilmette. And I do see that we have quite a bit of response from the people of Wilmette who did elect us, many of whom would be affected by a property tax, many of whom might be buying their groceries in other communities and would be double taxed, to Trustee Lever's point, who have spoken in favor of, instead of not voting for the grocery tax. I didn't say that very eloquently, but effectively of voting no. So that's what I'm going to do. But once again, I appreciate the sort of boundaries and the sort of parameters that we've set up through this discussion. And I will look forward to seeing ways in which we can make our overall fees and taxes less regressive for Wilmette.
So I really think, I also appreciated the discussion we've had over the last 3 meetings and again tonight. To me, this breaks down into 2 parts. The one is, why are we doing this now? The village board has long had a policy of not raising taxes above what we believe we actually need for the coming year to provide sufficient revenues to cover anticipated needs. That's how we budgeted for the 6.5 years I've been here. Last year, the village board actually approved a property tax levy for 25 that was less than the property tax levy for 2024, which is highly unusual, but justified by the circumstances and consistent with that policy. So I supported it. Since I've been on the board, the amount of every tax levy and every fee increase has been determined only after review of the staff's estimates of revenue and expected expenses for the coming year. That's the only way we've done it in the past. Passing an ordinance to impose a grocery tax now, before staff has presented its revenue and expense projections for 2026, will be a departure from that practice. At least in the time that I've been on the board, which, as I said, is 6.5 years, we have never done that before. I believe strongly that we should wait until staff has presented a proposed budget and we have an opportunity to review it. If it appears likely at any time between now and April 1st, 2026, that we actually need a grocery tax to balance our budget, we can institute a grocery tax at that time, which would begin on July 1st. We can begin it at any date. We can change our mind at any date. It would start on July 1st or January 1st, whichever comes first. If we were to do it on January 1st, then it would be presumably a $300,000 hole in the budget that we're talking about, which is not very much. We could temporarily fill that with a small draw from the over $10 million of overage that we have in the reserve fund. $300,000 out of $10 million. Not a big deal. And we could pay it back in future years. I don't see a risk to our financial security or our credit rating by waiting. in the almost 6.5 years, as I said, that I've been on the board, the village's actual revenue collections every year have greatly exceeded the projections. I mean, the projections have greatly exceeded, the actual revenues have greatly exceeded the projections. I don't want overly optimistic revenue estimations. It's not what I think is a good idea, or anything that's close to the line. But recent history has demonstrated that we have been overly conservative year after year after year. And I'm expecting that will probably continue. I just, because of the way that staff approaches estimation of projections. And this year alone, I think we're on path to increase that overage by $2 million. So there's a very real possibility that if we pass the grocery tax now, before we know whether revenue from such tax is really necessary, we will be levying a tax in excess of what we need. Even if you assume that this is a good time to do it, and I really think that delay, it makes far more sense. If we do actually, not hypothetically, need an additional $600,000 in revenue, the grocery tax, in my view, is the wrong vehicle for that. As we all said, we all know that it's a highly regressive tax. We're all in agreement on that, and we would prefer something that isn't. Property tax is regressive too. But that doesn't change the fact that regardless of income, everybody needs to eat. This is not a tax on discretionary expenditures. It's a tax on necessary expenditures. People can buy cheaper food, less nutritious food, and control their costs to some extent, but is that really what we want to force our residents to do? I don't think so. It's often been said and been written in the news articles that persons who receive SNAP benefits don't have to pay the grocery tax, but that is not entirely true. They only are exempted from the grocery tax to the extent that the food they purchase is with the SNAP benefits. And as we all know, SNAP is an assistance program. It does not cover all of their expenses. And according to the Institute for Urban Studies, it usually covers only about 75% of their grocery bill. So even on SNAP, they will be paying a substantial grocery tax for things in excess. And these are among our most needy, lowest income residents. Families with at least one child under 18 represent 45% of the households in Wilmette. And we all know that households with more children and more members have to buy more food. So they will be paying based on the size of their families, which would not be the case if we were talking about a property tax increase. And I think for a town that really wants to encourage families to live here and thinks of itself as family friendly, this is sort of contrary to that. With grocery prices in 2024 already 23% higher than they were, 23% than they were in 2020, and prices continuing to rise, this also just seems the very worst moment to be doing this. Those who prefer a grocery tax to a slight increase in our property tax do so on the assumption that price-conscious residents buy their groceries elsewhere, outside Wilmette, where they have to pay the grocery tax no matter where they go. This is just pure speculation. We really don't know where people shop. And I find it interesting, sort of amusing, in the last few days when we've had these sessions when we've had these discussions, everybody has different ideas about which grocery stores these people are using. And we can't even agree among ourselves where they're going. We're just speculating. And it's also true that a lot of people don't buy any of their groceries here. So they would get all the benefits of the $600,000 without paying any grocery tax here. We don't know where they shop. We don't know how many people are buying groceries from outside Wilmette. This is just speculation, and I don't like to create public policies based on mere speculation. I do believe that more residents shop at the Jewel store than you realize, including residents on the west side, but I don't know for a fact. And I just don't feel comfortable relying on it. What I do know, however, is that if we impose a grocery tax, there will likely be no store within reasonable driving distance where a Wilmette resident who truly could benefit from not paying the tax would be able to shop. Not one. I'm astonished, frankly, by the amount of public comment we got in the last week. I counted when I stopped checking at about 6:30 tonight, and at least 75 have written emails. Some have spoken here. By my judgment, it's not just an overwhelming majority. It is everybody but one. And I don't remember ever seeing write-in campaigns or I don't mean campaigns, but one of them looked like a form letter. But just because it's a form letter doesn't mean that people don't sincerely have that view. So we can't just dismiss the fact that they're using a form letter. I've never seen such a lopsided public opinion survey, for lack of a better word. I've never seen it. And I haven't seen this many emails in the years I've been on the board, except perhaps, except of course in the case of Optima and in the case of the Northwestern Stadium project. But otherwise, this is an extraordinary amount of public comment. And I don't think we can ignore it. This is not something like the minimum wage. And I'll explain why. When the minimum wage was under consideration, there were two different groups who had different interests. You had the businesses who sincerely, but as it turns out incorrectly, thought that the minimum wage would harm them. And then you had residents who just, as a matter of public policy, didn't want someone to stand in the way of a raise. We had to balance. I wasn't on the board at the time, but the balance had to be between these two groups and their two views. That is not the case here. We are not balancing two groups. We are simply reflecting, or should be reflecting, on what the community wants. And I would have expected at least 2 letters from people who didn't like the idea of dropping the grocery tax. But I'm just astounded. I am absolutely astounded. And I don't know that we can really ignore that, because those people are willing to take the risk that they'll pay both taxes, and they're still fine with it. They've heard our discussions. They've read about it in the North Shore Record. They've maybe watched the tapes. This is all the arguments that are being made tonight were made before. They know those arguments, and they still come out more than overwhelmingly against continuing the grocery tax. And I don't know how to explain to the community why we wouldn't take very, very seriously public opinion on this particular subject, where you're not talking about two different groups' interests that we have to balance, because we don't. So, to summarize, I think it's premature. I think we can decide this later. We can decide it 6 months from now. And I think that if there is an actual need for a grocery tax, this is not the way to do it. And, oh, I'm sorry. I did want to one thing that was not in my notes, but I understand, Trustee Leonard, that you're concerned about property taxes and the relationship between property taxes and property value. But Wilmette's share of the property taxes between 11 and 12%. And we're talking about something that would be the equivalent of about $59. I can't see how that could possibly affect home values. And more importantly, the biggest drivers, frankly, of property taxes are two things over which we have absolutely no control. And that one is the taxation level of the other taxing bodies that go into that bill. And the second is assessments of value. And that is really what drives taxes up and down, not $59 extra a year. And we have absolutely no control of that. So while I appreciate what you're saying, I don't think that that's a good enough argument to say that $59 is just too much for people to bear. Because I can assure you that with the reassessment of their home values, it's going to be a hell of a lot more than $59. So.
Thank you. We've all had a chance to speak. I know Trustee Smith is not here tonight. He's spoken on this in the past. This is a complicated issue, and we've grappled with it here in Wilmette. We've grappled with it for the past couple months. We've had discussions at the public meeting. We've had private discussions with homeowners. This is not easy, and every municipality in the state is having a similar discussion. And I think it's relevant that our neighboring municipalities have enacted this tax not because we are jumping on the bandwagon, but because grocery stores and all of our stores have a regional customer base. It's not a coincidence that the grocery stores in Wilmette are located on our borders. Neighboring towns do the same thing. The Costco straddles Glenview and Northbrook practically. They know grocery stores, other stores know where to locate to get the most customer base that they can. And so municipalities across the state are facing this issue where they have residents and non-residents bringing in this tax that they rely on. And, you know, we have had this tax since 1990. So at least for the last 35 years, and possibly we had our own local tax before that, but I haven't been able to find that out. We've had it in good years and we've had it in lean years. We've had it in years where, you know, we barely had enough money in reserves, and we have it in years where we have an abundance of reserves and we feel like we're doing well, and you know the economy is good, doing well, and you know we're happy about that right now. But nevertheless, it does create a hole in our budget that it has been a stable revenue source for the last 35 years, and municipalities are facing this very difficult issue right now. When the state took $325 million that municipalities now all of a sudden had to figure out how they were going to pay for it. I think it's not surprising that the Evanston data showed that 56% of shoppers in Evanston came from towns outside Evanston. You know, a lot of them are coming from Wilmette, shopping at the Whole Foods on Green Bay Road, which is right next to our Jewel, and we can expect that likewise too. I, like Trustee Shepherd mentioned, and trustees in the past, I do worry that taking that revenue that has come from non-residents and putting it solely on Wilmette residents makes it a greater burden overall on Wilmette residents. And the bottom line is Wilmette residents, unfortunately, will pay more. And if those Wilmette residents don't shop in Wilmette, if they are not near a grocery store and they choose to shop elsewhere, if they choose to shop at a bulk store, if they choose to shop at a discount store, if they choose to shop at a specialty store, they are paying that. So I do think that putting this burden on the property tax is likely to disproportionately affect residents on the west side of Wilmette, and certainly any residents who don't regularly shop at the two Jewels on the east side of Wilmette. I don't think a 1% tax on groceries is likely to change habits of people that don't shop at those Jewels, because other options, if price is the only factor, will still be less expensive. I think we all talk about how we agree with many of the arguments that have been made here. And as I say every week in our opening remarks, that we are all striving to support and improve our community, but we may have different ideas for achieving that objective. This is not a decision I take lightly, and this is certainly not a decision that any of us on the board take lightly. And I respect the opinions of all 7 of us on the board with this. And while I share the concerns about the regressive nature of the tax, the alternate, I fear, is that we will be double taxing residents and that we will create more of a burden for residents. So with that, I think we've discussed this as much as we possibly could. Mr. Hallgren, could you please?
Could I just ask one question? What about the issue of postponing this till after we actually have projections for next year? Is there, I have not really heard a response to that particular argument from people that are supporting it, and I'd like to get their input on that. Why they think that waiting 6 months is untenable.
I think in my argument, I made that we've had this for 35 years now, and some years we're going to have better years, and some years we're going to have worse years. And I think that in any given moment of time, if you could you had a good year and you didn't need an extra $300,000 that year, number one, it would be reflected in the property tax and people would have lower property taxes that year if we found that extra money in our budget. But I don't see how waiting 6 months is going to make a difference. This has been a revenue source for us on a regular basis for 35 years. And so that,
I'll add too,
yeah.
I felt I addressed it a little bit in that no matter what we decide on the expense side, this is foregone revenue that will accrue no matter what the denominator is at the end to our property tax. Just, we will need, I agree with you, it's not gonna put us, on the wrong path of bankruptcy. I mean, if we get to the point where we've not done the grocery tax, but we need it to bail out, that means it's a very tough economic time, and I don't think it would be a good time to try and make a switch back to it at that point. It's the consistency of the outside revenue source, which will always come, that is the reason. But I appreciate your point, question.
All right. I think we're there. Mr. Holgren?
Do we need a motion, or did we have a motion?
We did have a motion and a second. So I should preface that. It's been moved and been seconded.
Okay.
Mr. Holgren, could you please call the roll?
Trustee Leonard.
Aye.
Trustee Shepherd.
Aye.
Trustee Steen.
No.
Trustee Lieber.
Aye.
Trustee Kennedy.
No.
And President Plunkett.
Aye. Thank you. Motion carries. Trustee Shepherd, do you have anything else?
All other items are on consent.
Okay. Trustee Kennedy, I know you've got something.
Oh, yes, I do. I don't know who's presenting, but someone I hope is presenting the Master Bike and Active Transportation Plan update. Thank you, Mr. Manus.
All right. Good evening, President Plunkett, members of the board, Dan Manus, Village Engineer. I'm here tonight to discuss the village's Master Bike and Active Transportation Plan. Joining me is another village staff member that is heavily involved in implementation of the plan, and that is Project Manager Ron Melanesio. Tonight, we will provide background on plan development, contents, and implementation. This presentation is also intended to lay the foundation for a decision on bicycle accommodations that will be in front of the board in October for the Lake Avenue Improvement Project. Even before this timeline, the village's bicycle task force laid the groundwork for a community-wide plan in the early 2000s. Then the Master Bike Plan Advisory Group was formed, and they were tasked with scoping for a community-wide study. This led to the selection of the Civil Tech and Active Transportation Alliance consulting team. And after much public engagement and several steps of review of different public bodies, the plan was ultimately adopted by the village board in early 2021. Most simply put, the plan provides the village a guide to implementing pedestrian and bicycle improvements. It also provides the village a tremendous benefit by strengthening applications for grant funding. The plan is by no way final. Before recommendations are implemented, they're studied further, and they also require additional public input. The Transportation Commission spent some time on the plan's vision statement to ensure that the statement accurately conveyed or best embodied the objective of the plan. The vision statement is, the Village of Wilmette commits to building a safe, inviting, and context-sensitive transportation network for all users. We visualize Wilmette as an accessible community for people of all ages and abilities, where any transportation mode including walking, biking, and driving, is expected on the transportation network, welcomed through secure, comfortable, and convenient design and reflected in village policies and programs. It is important to note that the plan also included a impact evaluation, and this was to ensure that the plan balanced other uses in the public right-of-way, primarily including car traffic, parking, and trees. The plan includes various types of network recommendations. Many village streets are low volume, low speed residential streets. So the most predominant bicycle treatment is the bike boulevard. A bike boulevard includes shared lane bike symbols and bicycle signage to alert motorists to the potential of cyclists sharing the road. An important outcome of the plan is the emphasis that it was a living document. This requires the Transportation Commission to revisit the plan on a regular basis. This ensures that the plan itself and the implementation goals can evolve to meet changing needs of the community. The implementation process over the past several years has been routine. Typically in July, an update of the implementation schedule is presented to the Transportation Commission. Approved projects are included in the CIP, and then with approval of the village budget in the fourth quarter, project development begins. There are 3 primary project development phases. These are the study phase, the design engineering phase, and then construction. The image on the bottom right displays all the project locations that have at least one project development phase included in the most recent 5-year plan. I'd like to now invite Project Manager Ron Melanesio up to share more details on the most recently approved plan.
Thank you, Dan. Good evening, members of the Village Board. I am Ron Melanesio. I'm an engineering project manager with the Village. This graphic here really has 2 main purposes. First, it shows the existing bike and pedestrian network throughout the village, and second, it gives you a sense of how connected the network is today and will be. The goal of our plan is to reduce those gaps in the network and create logical north-south and east-west routes that link neighborhoods with key destinations. I'd like to take a moment to highlight a few of those projects from the plan that have already been implemented. The first being the Greenleaf Bike Boulevard was completed in 2022. This project created an east-west corridor that connected Poplar Ave with 4th Street. The following year, we added the Washington Avenue Bike Boulevard, which also serves as an east-west route between Ridge Road and Hunter Road. What makes this project especially valuable is that it links several important destinations at High Crest Middle School, Wilmette Junior High, Regina High School, and the community park. In 2024, we completed the Sheridan Road crosswalk improvements at 10th Street and in Elmwood. These include high visibility stamped concrete crosswalks designed to fit the character of the neighborhood. These intersections see high volume of foot traffic, and these improvements were a direct response to residents' concerns about safely crossing Sheridan Road. And most recently, we've installed the rectangular rapid flashing beacons at Wilmette 15th and over on Highland and Ridge Road. These flashing LED signals are activated when pedestrians press a button at the crosswalk, alerting drivers that people are crossing. Both locations are on designated school walking routes and are heavily used by students. This slide shows the projects that are included in the current 5-year implementation plan for next year. You'll notice it's a healthy mix of projects at different stages of planning and design. One I like to highlight is the Elmwood, Hunter, and Thornwood Bike Boulevard, which will run from Illinois Road to Ridge Road. This route is along a school route, walking route for Harbor School, and will provide a key east-west connection north of Lake Avenue. We are also planning crosswalk improvements on Ridge Road at Schiller and at Birchwood. These intersections, at these intersections, we are planning to extend the curb slightly into Ridge Road. This helps pedestrians be more visible to drivers and makes it easier for these pedestrians to see around parked vehicles when crossing. And you've already seen this type of treatment in other parts of the village, like at Central and 10th and Wilmette and 15th. And looking further ahead from 2027 to 2030, we have proposed approximately $2.68 million worth of pedestrian and bicycle improvement projects. So there's a strong pipeline of projects moving beyond 2026. The Master Bike and Active Transportation Plan has really positioned the village well to compete for grant funding. Thanks to this plan, we currently have several grant-funded projects in Phase 1. For those who may not be familiar, Phase 1 is the stage where we define the scope of the project, identify the deficiencies, and gather stakeholder feedback and complete preliminary engineering, and it's a required step in projects that receive grant funding. The first project on this list is Lake Avenue, and staff will be making a very detailed presentation on this project at the board meeting on October 28th. Some of the bike and pedestrian elements being considered include improvements to the Green Bay Road trail crossing just east of the railroad tracks, and as well as multiple bike treatment options along Lake Avenue. The second project is Green Bay Road Rehabilitation Streetscape Project. This one focuses on enhancing the streetscape to create a more pleasant pedestrian experience, and it also looks to improve all 7 of the village's railroad crossings along Green Bay Road to make them more pedestrian friendly. One note here, while this project is moving forward, it has not yet received grant funding, and the village will be submitting an STP grant application this fall to help cover construction costs. Next, we have the Hibbard Road Reconstruction Project. A key component here is a new side path that would run from Old Glenview Road to Skokie Boulevard. This would serve as a major north-south route on the west side of the village and would connect future bike and pedestrian routes at both ends. And finally, there's the Wilmette Glenview Ridge Bike and Pedestrian Project. This one is significant in scope, and that it runs from the western village limits on Glenview Road to Wilmette Ave and then to Ridge Road. It also includes all of Ridge Road, and the project proposes a variety of treatments with the goal of creating a major connection from the west side of the village to the east side of the village along the Glenview-Wilmette corridor. And it will also serve destinations like the Community Rec Center and the Centennial Park, and provide a key north-south route along Ridge Road. Additionally, this project is included in the Northwest Municipal Conference Regional Plan. And finally, I want to touch on the grant-funded projects that are already in Phase 2. Phase 2 is a stage where detailed engineering occurs and the construction documents are prepared so projects can be bid. We've got 2 projects in this stage right now, the first being Skokie Boulevard Path. This project is an 8 to 10 foot wide a multi-use path running along Skokie Boulevard from Illinois Road to Lake Avenue, and is scheduled for construction in the summer of 2026. The second is a Skokie Valley Trail, and it will be built along the ComEd right-of-way just west of Laramie Avenue. This project is unique because it includes several different municipalities, with the village of Northfield currently leading Phase 2, and construction is expected to begin in 2028. So with that said, this concludes the overview of the Master Bike and Active Transportation Plan. I'd like to take a moment to thank the village's Transportation Commission. Each year they review and approve the annual update to the plan, and their input and guidance plays a key role in keeping the plan on track and ensuring that it reflects the community needs. Thank you for your time and attention, and Dan and I would be happy to answer any questions from the board at this time.
Yes.
First off, thank you very much for your hard work. And all of this work, as I'm looking at one of the pages of the things that have been done so far, really happy to see this, because one of the things I would love to see in Wilmette is more bike connectivity, more pedestrian friendliness. In particular, I think the Wilmette Glenview Ridge Road project of connecting all the way to the western edge of Wilmette, and presumably Glenview would then connect it to the North Branch Trail, perhaps, or at least one would hope, because that way we would then have a connection from the Green Bay Trail all the way over to there, and you could get literally from Chicago through Wilmette up to Wisconsin. One quick question, actually kind of three-part question about the RRFBs, the flashing lights. So the three parts are, first, what has the reaction been? What kind of reaction have you folks gotten? Second, what is the cost, if there is a definable cost? Because I assume it's kind of a set of four. And then the third question is, are there plans or thoughts to implement those in other locations? So the reaction, the cost, and perhaps expansion.
Sure. So in general, we've received positive reaction from these RFBs, so much that they're being requested at every single intersection throughout the village.
So I guess that's the answer.
So yeah. So that's been positive. Second, the cost. So just to give you an example, we recently installed one on Ridge and Highland, and I believe the cost was around $40,000. That includes some other costs. Typically, we've historically have been including those curb extensions along with the RFBs, but give or take around $40,000 in current prices. That changes, and there could be a difference of plus or minus 10 or 20%.
And for that location, is it two? I can't remember.
So that particular location has two, yes.
And the one on Wilmette has four. On Wilmette Avenue.
So there's two on Wilmette Avenue. There's one on 15th. That one also has two. And then there's one on Prairie. That's a unique one, and that has four. And that's very unique. You don't typically see that configuration. And as far as plans for future locations, I'm not aware of any plans for future locations. In general, you like to minimize those uses because, like with traffic control devices, the more you use it, the less the compliance rate goes down. So we have been including them at locations where there are school walking routes, where students cross relatively busy streets, and at Plaza del Lago, which also has a high pedestrian volume. So that's basically where we like to use them.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So first of all, thank you. I'm a big fan of the plan, and I appreciate the implementation, and I appreciate the work. All of this work comes from the initial goal that came out of the master plan. Do we have any way of measuring the impact of these changes? There could be lots of different ways to do that, but through number of bike riders, through number of pedestrians, through near misses or accidents, anything that we are using to measure the impact?
So gathering this type of data is difficult, and it's considering that the network hasn't been really built out. But anecdotally, I could tell you that we've received a lot of feedback that the bike racks and all the other infrastructure has been heavily used, and you can go past any one of the schools and you will see that the bike racks are at capacity or near capacity. So that said, I think we're comfortable saying that ridership has increased just based on that anecdotal evidence.
So I'd love to see, I appreciate that, and that's a creative way to think about that. I appreciate also that it's not fully built out yet. In fact, before it's built out is the right time to define a metric and measure it before and after. Don't know exactly if there are ways to make measurements, to measure either ridership or pedestrian usage, or as I said, near misses or accidents. But I would love to see us as as we're moving through the plan, think about how can we demonstrate that the investment we're making here is really having the impact that we want it to have. We all believe it, but it's really nice to have evidence.
Sure. No, we could keep that in mind when we make updates and make presentations to the Transportation Commission.
Thank you.
I'll add to the chorus of thank yous. This is really great just to see every year more of this getting chunked out and done. It's a great collaboration between, most importantly, the work you all are doing, and then the commission, and then what we add. So it's great to see. One really specific question: are there still more things to have to happen before the construction on the Skokie Boulevard path this summer, or does that look like it's pretty good? I'm irrationally excited about that one.
So yeah, everyone is.
Yes.
So we are working through some right-of-way issues.
Okay.
But we do anticipate construction occurring next year. So the property owner, which is WS Development, they are been working with the village, and we are hopeful that we can resolve the right-of-way issues. Not because they aren't cooperative; it's just the federal process takes a long time, and there's a lot of paperwork and checking the box and things like that need to occur before that transaction can happen.
Well, thank you for everything you've done to push this and everything through.
All right, thank you.
I have a specific question too, on bike boulevards in particular, because that's kind of like the least infrastructure you can have to designate a bike route. And I think maybe to Trustee Steen's point, how have those been working in the village? And, do we have any feedback on, how bike boulevards are going, how they make it safer for riders?
So we've received feedback, and in general, they've been positive. Occasionally, there'll be some people who just don't want any facility, but that just comes with the territory. But in general, the goal or the objective is to make motorists aware that bicyclists are on that road, and bicyclists can use a road regardless, but it just brings attention to whoever is driving on those roads that there is a potential for a vehicle or for a bicycle to be there, and just to be aware of them. So, but in general, yeah, I think we've received a lot of positive feedback on the bike boulevards, and it's difficult because within a community like Wilmette, it's really well built out. So there's really not a lot of room for new infrastructure. So that's like the default treatment. So.
And then the also specific, but I bet a lot of folks don't really know the difference in the terminology. So we have bike boulevard, side path, bike lane.
Yes.
What else am I missing? Sharrows. Okay.
Sharrows could be part of a bike boulevard.
Okay. And the side path is meant for pedestrians and bikes.
Yeah. So a side path could be considered a multi-use path. So it's intended for both bicyclists and pedestrians.
Okay, so that's what's going in on Skokie Boulevard and on Hibbard.
Yes.
Okay. And residents can, when you talk about the different phases, where can residents find out about all this information?
So residents can find out on the village website,
Yep.
because those particular projects have their own pages, and as part of the phase one process, we're required to gather feedback, and we would do that even if it wasn't required part of the federal process. But it's always advertised in a local newspaper. It's sent out through an email blast through the village's e-news. Residents along those corridors are always notified whenever there's a public meeting opportunity to gather feedback and to present the project. So there are multiple opportunities for residents to participate.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, when this was a glimmer in the eye of the board, I remember, I don't know how many, 12 years ago or so, when we voted to, and the number of years is wrong, but I remember passing, the money for the initial study for this master bike and active transportation plan. And it's just really exciting to see this happen, and I want to thank the Transportation Committee too. And so, I mean, this is an annual update for us, but we're obviously going to be digging into it a lot more soon when we talk about Lake Avenue, but it's great to have it. I think we'll be digging into the Transportation Committee more as we talk about, dare I say, e-bikes and scooters in the future. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
And I'd just like to acknowledge Dan, Ron, and the other members of the engineering team who work on these projects. These are incredibly time intensive. And we have this whole plan, but each project is its own project that they're starting from scratch every year on these. And unlike a road improvement project or a sidewalk project, curb replacement, there's intensive public outreach and public feedback and participation. So it's an incredible amount of time, but it's also super important to the community. So thank you guys for your great work.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you. Trustee Kennedy, anything else?
No, just thanks to the staff for the very good presentation.
Public Safety Committee, Trustee Smith, all items are on consent. And Trustee Lieber.
No report.
Okay. We have no reports from special committees and
President
no.
Plunkett.
Yes.
We skipped administrative.
Oh, my
committee,
goodness.
So I missed my chance to say that all items are on consent, which is really.
I
highlight of
appreciate
my
that
meeting.
you did that, and I jumped to Trustee Kennedy because I knew there was a presentation,
know.
and I skipped over you.
It's okay.
Thank you, thank you.
Well, go ahead and say it.
I said it.
Yeah, he
All
said- he
items
said
are on
it. All
consent.
items are on
Sorry. All items are on consent. This
We
you
might
go.
have had to come back to do
I know.
that if you had not
Sing.
jumped in.
So-
So thank you. Okay, with no new business, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We stand adjourned. Thank you.